Welcome. My name is Christy Arzola and I'm a watercolor artist. I have been painting for over 15 years and here are some examples of my art. If you're interested in seeing more, please visit my website. I can also be found on Instagram and Facebook. Today's lesson is about watercolor glazing. I'll tell you what it is, different ways that it can be used, how to fix mistakes, and I'll give you a simple project that'll build your skills and confidence. I noted the timestamp for each stage of this video for your convenience. These are the materials that we'll be using for today's project. I put links to specifics in the video description. Today we're going to talk about glazing. Glazing is when you take thin washes of color and you overlap previous washes that have already dried. It's a great way to adjust tints and slowly build values in a painting. You have to use a quality brush with soft pressure in order to be successful. If you are using an acrylic brush or something with stiff bristles, you will not be able to glaze as successfully because the underlying layers will lift. Glazing can be used for multiple purposes. One is for darkening. Perhaps in my painting I laid down this wash of yellow paint, but after reflecting and allowing it time to dry, I realize it's not quite as dark as I would prefer. So I can grab a secondary color and apply a thin glaze over top to darken the value. Another way glazing can be used in painting is to create gradients. Perhaps I laid down this soft pink in my painting, but I realized that the left edge didn't quite get as dark as I would prefer. After it has dried, I can choose to do a second glaze over top, darkening that left edge, rinsing my brush and using clean water to drag out that right edge, creating a gradient from dark to light. Now this technique is not easy and it does take a soft touch and finesse, so it will take more than one practice. Another way that glazing can be used to create gradients is by laying in a secondary glaze on top and using charging to push the values on one side. So I can apply that dark blue on the left edge, which then blends with my second glaze, and it ends up charging and creating a gradient from dark to light. Glazing does take some finesse. It requires a quality brush that has soft bristles and a very soft touch. You're going to be most successful with glazing if you can accomplish the second glaze in one pass. If you attempt to apply that second glaze with multiple passes, eventually what's going to happen is the underlying glazes are going to bleed and be dragged into the secondary glaze, creating a more muddy appearance. If you apply that second glaze with too much pressure and too many brush strokes, you will end up lifting the previous glazes, creating this chopped up, irregular effect. If you accidentally do this, I want you to try not to get frustrated, allow it to dry, and apply clean water to the surface of your shape. By applying pressure and water, I can even out the values in my shape, allow to dry, and attempt to glaze a second time. So remember, anytime you are glazing, use soft pressure, thin washes of color, and try to achieve that second glaze with minimal brush strokes. For today's project, I want you to look at your color palette, and with each color you're considering using, I want you to paint a stripe across a scrap piece of paper. This exercise will help you to determine which colors glaze over one another nicely, creating values and tints that you find visually appealing. It will also help you eliminate color combinations that are not to your personal preference. This project is low stress. Both kids and adults can enjoy it. It also strengthens your brush control, and it will provide confidence and muscle memory when it comes to glazing skills. Once your paint has dried, I want you to rotate your paper so that you can paint stripes perpendicular to the ones you just did. And we're going to follow the same order of colors. I want one stripe of each color going down. Once you've completed this glazing exercise, I want you to take a moment and look closely at the color combinations you've created. Select 3, maybe 4 max to use in today's project. The colors I've selected for today's project is Viridian, Yellow Ochre, and Dioxazine Purple. If you don't have this purple in your palette, you can always mix Cerulean Blue and Purple Lake to get something very similar. And remember, you don't have to pick the colors I'm using. Pick 3 colors from your palette that you've tested out and you like, and we'll get going. For today's watercolor project, I want you to take a ruler and break up your watercolor paper into interesting shapes. You don't have to put the lines exactly where I put them. Just think of an abstract design and have fun. Once you've drawn your lines, you're going to need to take a kneaded eraser to soften the graphite lines so they're less visible in the end painting. Once you have your lines drawn, go ahead and mix your first glaze using your watercolor palette. Using soft pressure, follow your pencil lines as a guide and complete the glaze from one edge of your painting all the way to the other. Once you've painted one stripe, you need to allow it to dry before you overlap any of the other colors. Something I'm always thinking about as I'm painting is color balance. In an abstract design, if I have a little bit of Viridian hue on the bottom right of my painting, I'm going to want to find a way to bring some Viridian hue on the opposite side of the painting as well. So while this is drying, I'm going to rotate my painting and paint this next stripe. Keeping my washes thin but vibrant. There is going to be a lot of dry time with this project, and I'm going to fast forward through those sections where I use my blow dryer. If you don't like the amount of dry time in this project, you can always work multiple pieces at once using different colors. That way, as you work on one, your previous painting is drying. It's a great way to create some really colorful series. This is now Yellow Ochre. I'm just doing a thin wash, going right over top of my Viridian hue. I need to remember to keep soft, light pressure, and I need to make sure I have enough water on my brush, otherwise I'm going to accidentally lift those previous layers with the Viridian. I need to hit this with the blow dryer again. This is a thin wash of that purple going directly over that Viridian hue and Yellow Ochre. I absolutely love the color that the purple and Viridian hue make. It's this bluish gray that is really pretty. Now I'm going to use a ruler and a pencil to add some additional lines to break up the space. If you feel confident in your brush control, you can choose to draw only one line and just follow that pencil edge with the edge of your square paintbrush. It takes a little bit of thought to find some nice strategic areas to place these lines for visual appeal, but just have fun with it. Don't overthink it. Now I'm going to simply follow this pencil's edge with the top edge of my square brush, and I'm allowing the thickness of my brush to determine how wide my stripe is. While this stripe is drying, I'm going to find another horizontal stripe that I can do. I have one more line that I can paint before using the blow dryer. I'm going to use some more yellow ochre. Now before I can paint the other two stripes, I'm going to have to hit this with the blow dryer again. Going to glaze some more purple. Notice how I have the same quantity of colors for each stripe. I have 3 for Viridian Hue, 3 for purple, and 3 for the yellow ochre. So I'm trying to build them gradually together. I'm not doing all one color at once. After this dries, I'm going to have to break up my paper with some additional lines so I know where else to apply paint. But if you see any values that are not regular, for example, going from dark to light, just use some of those glazing techniques that we talked about at the beginning of this video by adding additional glazes on top to even out the value. I absolutely love the color that the purple and Viridian Hue make when they're together. So I'm going to break up my painting with some additional straight lines, and I will be mixing that as a value to do some additional glazing. I'm keeping really nice soft values. I'm not going too dark because I want to get that kaleidoscope effect with all the multiple layers. As long as you keep your values soft and light, you can layer for hours, creating a really beautiful piece in the end. You just have to stick with me and have the patience. Work multiple pieces at once if you don't like waiting for it to dry every 5 minutes. To determine where I draw these additional pencil lines, I'm looking for areas where I feel like there are big shapes that need to be broken up into smaller shapes. This is that beautiful gray that the purple and Viridian Hue make. Absolutely love it. I hope you continue to rotate your painting every time you're painting a new stripe just to make the whole process a little easier for you. I want you to be comfortable while you work. Now it's completely up to your personal preference at which stage you want to stop, but I love the kaleidoscope effect when you layer a bunch, so I'm going to continue breaking up my painting and adding additional values because I think it makes it even more interesting to look at in the end. There's a beautiful green that the Viridian Hue and Yellow Ochre makes, so I'm going to mix up a light value of that green on its own, and I'm going to do some thin glazing with that across my painting as well. You can get a lot of different values and colors using just 3 colors from your palette, and it makes for a really harmonious painting. If you use too many colors, it doesn't look right. Adding some more glazes with the green. I'm constantly remaining aware of where my painting is wet before I apply additional glazes. If it weren't for this blow dryer, I would have to walk away from my painting many times or work 3 separate paintings at once so that they could be drying while I'm working on the next one. I mixed up a really soft value of my yellow ochre. Well, that completes this painting. If you really wanted, you could continue to layer endlessly just to see how far you can push that kaleidoscope effect. But when you look close, I absolutely love all the different glazes, how you can see through one another, and it really builds a lot of dimension. I hope you enjoyed this painting. Making these YouTube videos is a very new adventure, but if you like what you saw, please give me a thumbs up or hit the subscribe button. You can also click on the bell in the upper right-hand corner if you want to receive notifications. And as always, don't be shy. Feel free to leave a comment, let me know what your thoughts are, and if there's anything in particular you'd like to learn, give me a shout out.